Magyanatimirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshramilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaiva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namah Anarapitacharim Chirat Karunayavatiruna Kalaham Shamarpaitamannatvaj Balarasam Svabhakti Shriyam Hari Purata Sundara Dyuti Kadamba Sandipita Sada Hridaye Khandaresh Purato Vasatinandana Ajanulambita Bhujyo Kanakavadato Sankirtanai Kapitaru Kamalaya Takshu Vishwambaro Duyabaro Jugadharma Pal Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karuna Avataru He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Sachinandan Gaur Hari Ki Jai, Shri Harinam Prabhu Ki Jai, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Gopinath, Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Gaur Nityananda Ki Jai, Sadhu Sangha Ki Jai, Gaur Premanand Hari Hari Bol. So, Dandavat to all of you. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. And embarking together into another attempt of saying something about the infinite. It's an eternal attempt. No matter how much we try, the horizon keeps expanding. Ananta kata, as Ananta kata rasasya, as Uddhav say in the Bhagavatam. To say something about the infinite is called Ananta kata. Ananta is the name of Krishna, the unlimited one, the one without end. So naturally, if you want to talk about he who is without end, the conversations are without end, similarly. And that's why we're invited, like the Gita, Krishna says in the Chatur Shloki of the Gita, Katayantas Chamam Nityam. Devotees talk about me perpetually. Satatam Kirtayantomam, engage in Kirtan forever. Kirtaniya Sadahari, eternally indulging in Kirtan. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. And all these expressions which give us this like eternal prospect to engage in this that we were talking yesterday, right? We have the enormous fortune of being doing already what we want to do for eternity. Talking about Krishna, sharing our hearts in that connection, singing his glories. That's already happening. Eternity is already happening somehow. Eternity has come to embrace us. And in that sense, Bhakti is a post-liberated stage, right? That's why Bhakti doesn't care for mukti. Mukti is liberation. So in order for us not to care for liberation means that we must have encountered something bigger than liberation. And that's called Bhakti, a post-liberated state, where, like the Bhagavatam say, Narayana prasarvina kutaschana bibhyati swarga pavarga naraka swapitulyartha darshana. Bhagavatam is saying, for the devotee of Bhagavan, liberation, mystic powers, going to hell, going up, going down, left, right, they don't care. It's the same for them. No. So that naturally brings this question, like, how can such a different possibilities like heaven, hell, be the same? No? So it must, in one way, you are beyond all that for them to be the same. No? So that's the situation of a bhakta, ideally. Like, because you are already receiving the chance of engaging in what we want to do for eternity. That's the glory of Bhakti, that's the power of Bhakti, that's the grace of Bhakti. So somehow just this type of meetings is another chance of celebrating that fact, of reminding each other, hey guys, we are doing what we want to do for eternity. Don't forget that. And on that foundation, Sushukam Kartum. As Krishna says, Bhakti is to be performed joyfully, like in a celebratory spirit. Kirtan basically is that. Kirtan is celebration. We could translate Kirtan as celebration. Celebration of existence, celebration of the fact that we are blessed enough to be engaged in this eternal function, so to say, potential of the soul. And of course, the celebration goes to the point that it starts to overflow and sprinkle other souls also. So hopefully all of us at the end of the meeting come and leave the place sprinkled, a little bit more sprinkled. Hopefully more than that soaked deeply, but at least some sprinkled. A few drops of Bhakti is more than enough. Bhakti proper, and just one ray of that sun, just one drop from that ocean. We have to deal with that we have to process that for some time. So that's our hope, mutual hope. Hopefully we can sprinkle one another with each other's openness and association and Sangha, which is of course the birthplace of Bhakti. As Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Krishna Bhakti Janmamol Hoy Sadhu Sangha, Krishna Prem Janmatenho Punarmukya Anga. That's a very nice verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita. It says, the Krishna Bhakti Janmamol Hoy Sadhu Sangha. The root that gives birth to Bhakti is Sadhu Sangha. But that's only the warming up, so to say, of the verse, because then comes this post-liberated statement. Krishna Prem Janmatenha Punarmukya Anga. Even when you attain Krishna Prem, Sadhu Sangha remains Mukya Anga, remains like a primary facet expression of your post-liberated life. So again, we are not doing Sadhu Sangha to get something else in eternity. No. Because we like Sadhu Sangha so much, we will have nothing but Sadhu Sangha in eternity. So better we get along each other nicely here. No, because we will have lots of Sadhu Sangha in eternity. So better we are at peace with Sadhu Sangha, and we are at peace with all the aspects of Bhakti, because they are waiting for us forever in eternity. So that's a very beautiful idea in itself. So that's a few introductory thoughts about regarding what we are supposed to be doing this next hour. These days, we have been sharing a few thoughts, especially based on a book I published 2 years ago, Radical Personalism. It's over there. But yesterday we talked, of course, we celebrated Mahaprabhu's Sannyas Leela, and we talked about renunciation and what's the role of renunciation in our tradition. First day we talked about what's radical personalism and how we can, it's another way basically of framing Gaudiya Vaishnavism, how to speak about the essence of our tradition being radically, which means to the root, personal. It's all about worshiping the supreme personality of Godhead. But we have to be personal as well. How personal, how much of a person I am in relation to others, in relation to Krishna, in relation to myself. How much do I treat other people, as basic as that sounds. How much I depersonalize my relationships, even with God, and so on. So it's an ongoing reflection. So part of that reflection and part of the main themes of the book that Anupam Dinadayal invited me to talk about, today I'd like to talk about on the concept of humanity and the role of humanity in a spiritual life. What to do with our human condition is something to be embraced, integrated, transcendent, rejected, stigmatized, glorified. What to do with it? Is spiritual life about dismissing humanity? Is spiritual life about becoming more human than ever before? Is spiritual life about combining transcendence with humanness? We'll try to speak about that a little bit. And in that context, if we have time, let's see, we have to finish at 8. I'm joking. I'll try to share a few thoughts and also on the theme of vulnerability, which I personally feel is very important. And it's another way of speaking about humility, because sometimes some of these words, humility, surrender, have been somehow, how to say, misapplied or misrepresented and create lots of triggering. Like yesterday, I was quoting, I was explaining some particular point. I won't go too much into that, but I was quoting Apichet Suduracharo, 930 of the Bhagavad Gita, in the context of trying to give hope that Krishna, even if you are a mess and you are not a very good behavior, if you are honest in your practice, Krishna considers you a sadhu already. That was my point, just in case I'm re-clarifying. But it was funny because after the class, till today, different devotees were telling me, like, Maharaj, when you quote that verse, I get triggered. Because that verse has, I've heard that verse so many times invoked to justify abuse. No? Someone did the most horrible apichet to the Racharo. No? Even if you do that, Krishna is saying this. No? So I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. That was not my intention. No? And I tried to make clear my intention. And of course, but I can understand that triggers are there. So I think it's healthy to acknowledge our triggers, because the trigger points to something, sometimes unresolved trauma or sometimes whatever. And it's good to be acknowledging of that, because that's the only way you can address that and heal that. So again, my point is sometimes humility also is like, oh no, don't come with humility, Maharaj. Don't give me a gospel of humility. Don't talk about surrender. All those are in the black list of the glossary. But all those are so beautiful ideas and words, but we may need to redefine them or rediscover the original meaning. And sometimes something that may help in that is to use another word, because if I just say humility is trigger, so let's talk about vulnerability. And maybe you get triggered because of that one for another reason. You never know. But we'll try. But first of all, I like to go to the topic of humanity, because the two are very connected, as you may already imagine. And to begin with, as I like to make my point in the book, in Radical Personalism, and as you may imagine, ideally we shouldn't have any stigma around being human. Being human is not something bad, something wrong, something that needs to be dismissed as soon as possible, or even at some point. Why? Because we want in eternity to participate in what we call Naralila. Naralila. Krishna, Vrindavan, Mahaprabhu, Navadvip, they are, in Prabhupada's terms, they are playing their human-like pastimes, right? You have heard that expression, which I would like to clarify, because sometimes human-like, what do we understand by the like part? Like, okay, it's human, but no, it's not human. So what it is then? Human likeness, like pseudo-human, no, half-baked humanity, or it means fully human and fully something else, which is how I take it. Human-like. For me, the human part of the human-like translated human, fully human, like fully divine. So for me, technically speaking, Nara Lila, Nara means human, right? So Prabhupada translated human-like to indicate it's not just the humanity we know of as conditioned beings, but here we are speaking about the full spectrum of humanity, which has to do with attaining the full spectrum of transcendence, because the potential of human condition is to embrace spirituality, atato brahma jiknyasa. That's how Vedanta Sutra starts. Different ways to understand the term atato now, but one of them is now that you are in a human form, that you can inquire about Brahman, the absolute. So in other words, the fulfillment of human condition is transcendence. So the two are inextricably intertwined, connected. It's not like we can separate. And especially in our tradition, our ultimate goal is the human-like, or the Naralila of Krishna in Vrindavan, the sweet, intimate pastimes where God is as human as he can be, so to say, and fully divine at the same time. He's not like superhuman, like, I don't know, Narayan in Vaikuntha. If you take a tour to Vaikuntha, everyone will have 2 extra arms. That's pretty extraordinary. You don't feel like, okay, this is very human. It's like, why 2 extra arms? Because everyone has 2 extra arms here, even God. So it's another standard. But in Vrindavan, everything is so human that sometimes it looks ordinary. To the untrained eye, it's like, this is, it's called aprakrita sometimes. Aprakrita means it seems prakrita, it seems mundane, but it's aprakrita, super transcendental, super mundane. But it seems mundane because there's so much humanness, so much intimacy. But there's so much transcendence and divine content if you look attentively. So this is my main point, no? To justify why we have to take care of our humanity. Because you have to carry your humanity in a perfected form to the lila, so to say, to put it in some way. The Krishna, the Nara Lila of Krishna is the highest lila. Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Krishna Raya Teka Kila Sarva Uttama Nara Lila Nara Bapu Tanhara Sarup. Krishna Raya Teka Kila. Of all the leelas of Krishna, Sarva Uttam Nara Lila. The highest of all of them, Nara Lila. Tara Bapu Chanhara Swarup. In that Lila, Krishna is in his Swarup, in his original form. And we are invited to attain our ultimate potential in a human, divine form in the Lila as well. So that's an important point for us to consider, for especially if we have some problem with humanity at present, and we think it's something that we need to get rid of. Remember, you are, as a Gaudiya Vaishnava, you are planning to go to a place where there's full humanity. So better we make peace with humanness, because we won't get there. So as I like to put sometimes jokingly, if you are not a piece of your humanity, you will get to the pearly gates of Golok, and they will like, you are pretty dysfunctional in your humanity. Sorry, there's no place. We have some type of purgatory nearby with a psychologist, so you can integrate all your unredeemed layers of humanity, and then you can come back and you can enter, so to say. That will be our Brajabasi purgatory pre-entered. So that's our goal. Our goal is Nara Lila. Our goal is Nara Lila, and the human-like. The like part is, of course, some of us may be human-like now, but in another sense. We are human-like. No? Sometimes human, sometimes inhuman, sometimes pseudo-human. But that's that was not what Prabhupada referred when he said Nara Lila, human-like, right? So in one sense, that may be the main challenge for some of us. The main challenge will maybe not so much let's be transcendental, but let's be human. Sometimes it may be more difficult for us to be fully human than to be fully spiritual and transcendental, whatever we understand by that. Like we were talking the other day, this famous saying, you are not a human being trying to have a spiritual experience. You're a spiritual being trying to have a human experience. And sometimes we fail miserably at that. but we have to still try. I personally feel that we, in our tradition, and of course in other communities as well, I've perceived that same conflict or short-circuiting. And sometimes we get mixed messages. Sometimes we may hear the human form of life is the ideal vehicle. Sometimes you have these verses from the Bhagavatam, like the ideal boat to cross the ocean of samsara and misery and to arrive at the shore of whatever, divine love. So there is this praise, the human form for these opportunities, and in human body, in human condition, the consciousness, how to say, blossoms to the point that starts to inquire about its own source, which doesn't happen in other species. You don't see other species having an existential crisis, so to say. Like, who am I? What's the purpose of it all? So in human body, in human consciousness, that's happened. So we hear all this praise, but sometimes in between that we hear like matter is abominable, and this body is made of ignorance, and the senses are these. So how to, if we don't discern these two currents, we may get like a mixed message and create some short-circuiting and practice from a unintegrated place, so to say. Because remember, it's Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojan. So we have a certain goal, but we need a Sambandha. We need some knowledge that orients who we are and how to conduct ourselves in Abhideya, in practice. So if my Sambandha creates some short-circuiting, my Abhideya will be based on that. So my practice will be also maybe like dysfunctional, disjointed, so to say, which is, of course, not the idea. Because from a disjointed orientation and practice, you cannot expect a fully wholesome goal as a result, generally. So it's very important that that we integrate and we understand that whenever we find some negative observations about matter, as we were talking yesterday a little bit, it's not that matter in itself is bad. This is a Shakti of Bhagavan, in the service of Bhagavan. Probably way more dedicated to serving Bhagavan than we are, at least that I am. Right? I mean, I wouldn't dare to say I'm more surrendered than Maya Shakti in the service of Bhagavan. It's like, no way. So I have to venerate Maya Shakti as an elder, more dedicated Vaishnavi who is showing me the way of how to surrender to my source. So whenever we find some quote-unquote negative observation, we should understand quickly it's not about Maya Shakti matter, but it's about our approach to things. Like when Krishna says in the Gita, Dukhalayama Shashvatam. This world is miserable and temporary. That sounds pretty like, whoa, welcome to the material world. And we can really develop a pretty negative orientation from that. Okay, this world is miserable, temporary. I hope I'll leave this place as soon as possible. This is a prison house, and this type of imaginary that may create a negative, a lack of appreciation for many things that we could appreciate positively and find Krishna in them, so to say. And on another side, you have, someone like Prabodhananda Saraswati saying in Chaitanya Chandramrita, Vishwam Purnam Sukhayate. Vishwam Purnam Sukhayate. The whole universe is filled with joy. So you are like, okay, so miserable and temporary or filled with joy? No, what to do? Which one to? It's not so much which one to pick, but depending on your approach to matter, you will find miserableness or miserliness, whatever, and or joy. It's not about matter in itself. It's about how you're approaching things. If you, as we were talking yesterday, we see the whole world as connected with Krishna as it is, then it doesn't need to be seen as miserable. No, it can be a source of engagement and seva, and Krishna's in every atom, and we can have an epiphany in any possible direction, at least in principle. So that's an important point, and that extends to our human condition, because as we said yesterday, if I think matter is bad, on that foundation, probably that extends. If matter is bad, material body is bad, human condition is bad, and everything in connection with whatever is material is undesirable, to say the least. But again, humanity is not only, and this is maybe a bold point, but we need to do it. Humanity is not only a worthy vehicle, like with the example of the boat, a worthy vehicle to attain the goal, but in one sense we could say our human condition could be conceived not only as a means to the goal, but as part of our goal. Because again, in eternity, I plan to be fully human in our lila. So humanity is not only the means, like the boat, and when I reach the other side of the shore, goodbye boat, see you soon. But it continues to exist in a fully spiritualized way in the lila. There's some form of humanity in the lila, and not only some form, but the full form. Here is some form of humanity in how we may behave still half human, half something else, so to say. But in the Lila, there's the fullest expression of divinity, fullest expression of humanity. So as I like to say, our goal in life is not to stop being human, but to become fully human, which in many cases has not happened yet. Fully human and fully divine. Again, don't make, and we have to, how to say, learn to integrate these two, because for many of us, it's still those two may seem like opposites, like how fully human, fully divine. Well, that's what you find in the Nara Lila. That's fully human and fully divine. There's a perfect synthesis, perfect integration of the two. And of course, someone may bring some Purva Paksha to the table, and it's always welcome and necessary. Some opposing views, like, okay, Maharaj, I try to bring the Purva Paksha myself as an exercise to remain sober in my own presentation, not too biased. So one potential Purva Paksha could be, but Maharaj, we are souls, we are spirits, so we are Atman, technically speaking, Atman. And the Atman is not human, right? Because there is Atman in so many other forms of life, in the rabbit, in the tree. There is not a human soul in the tree, right? And it's not that the tree is human and the rabbit is human, but covered by rabbit consciousness. There's an Atman. Atman is not human, not rabbit, not trees, Atman. So how do we put all this together? If I'm Atman, how much I thought I was supposed to disidentify with whatever I'm not. So if I'm an Atman and I'm not human, the Atman is not human per se. I think I should get rid of my identification as a human. That constitutes an upadhi, like a temporary designation. And one of the definitions of bhakti, actually the definition of bhakti on which Rupa Goswami based his own definition of bhakti. Rupa Goswami defined bhakti, anyavilasita shunyam, and so on. But he based that on another verse from Narad Pancharatra, which begins saying sarvo padi vinirmuktam, which starts saying you get absolutely, completely rid of all upadis, of all false senses of identity. So how to harmonize that? Because it seems I'm promoting identification as a human, and it seems that that's an upadhi. So Maharaj, what's going on? Are you creating a new Apasampradaya here, or what's happening? So that's my Purva Paksha. I hope it's a valid Purva Paksha. And of course, I understand the Atman is not human, but in its ultimate potential in bhakti, when we as Atman contact bhakti in this particular line of thought, Gaudiya Vaishnavism, the ultimate attainment of the soul is to see that Deha Siddha Swarup, perfected identity in the Leela to serve Krishna in a human body. Eternally spiritually, but human at the same time. We cannot take the humanness. If you take all the humanness away from Krishna Lila, you no longer have Krishna Lila. You have to talk about Vishnu, Narayan, Vaikuntha, something else. We have to be very careful not to be sabotaging our project in eternity, like trying to dismiss all possible humanity. What remains then? So the Atman is not human, but when the Atman hosts bhakti and become affected by bhakti more and more in this particular tradition, eventually the ultimate potential of the Atma expresses itself in a fully human, full divine identity. So from that place, I'm saying, even if our present human body, you could say, was the result of a karmic reaction and things that we desired and did in previous lifetimes, I get the point. But also, bhakti is so powerful that it can fully ingress in our lives now and spiritualize our whole identity. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur speaks about that. If you open to bhakti, bhakti comes, spiritualizes your body, your mind, your senses. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu speaks about also Bhava Bhakti comes and transforms your whole mind. And maybe you have, how to say, as in this particular body, you have certain nature, acquired nature. And to give an example that I sometimes give, some devotees may be a little grumpy. No, let's put it that way. No, a little grumpy. And you become devotee and you fully open yourself to bhakti and you become fully spiritualized and you have now divine grumpiness. There's always someone grumpy in the lila, right? You need some like Jatila and Kutila and someone else. Madhumangal has his own mood as well. So there is a place to say, even if your body and your acquired nature and psyche is product of a conditioned experience, the ingress of bhakti can spiritualize. Of course, some things need to be put aside. I'm not saying that I'm a serial killer and now bhakti comes to me and I become a divine serial killer. I'm not saying that. But I'm not saying either that, okay, you are in certain way now, but when you go to, you become pure devotee, you have to become exactly the opposite of what you are. Because that's also, I don't know, for me it feels very, to begin with, not aligned with this Shastra says, and also impractical. No, like imagine you are practicing from a certain way, you have a certain identity, and you are feeling, well, but you ultimately must become something that is the exact opposite of who I am now, or how I perceive myself. It's kind of even dysfunctional. No? So for me, it's more user-friendly to think, I have this personality, this acquired nature, I realize things that I need to work on. I don't want to cheat myself. But also by the ingress of bhakti, everything can be spiritualized, and it doesn't mean that I need to change absolutely who I am in order to eventually, whatever, become pure devotee, serving lila, however you like to put it. So that's a very interesting point that comes from the bhakti tradition. In other traditions, they may not entertain this idea, but bhakti will say, we'll mention that. You can receive bhakti fully and your whole existence is purified, spiritual, and so to say, a version of that personality and body will exist eternally in the lila. Many acharyas will say that. Many will say, to give you an example, there is a possibility of serving Mahaprabhu eternally in Nitya Navadvip, as we talked the other day. Some will make the point, if in this lifetime as a sadhaka, as a practitioner, you become a siddha, a perfected being, your whole identity becomes spiritualized, and in an eternal version of that body and identity, you are serving Mahaprabhu. And many times that's why the pictures of our acharyas are kept in the altar, like a reminder, in that identity, in that form, generally it's a younger form, but a form similar to that, they are serving in the lila. So that all speaks about the power of bhakti. No? Like the sun, it enters and purifies everything. So anyhow, my point with this is that we are talking about humanity. So it's all about, in one sense, we could say it's all about humanity, all from here up to the eternal goal. We are humans now. We will have fully human identity in eternity. But if we want that, better we start here in trying to make peace with our humanity and integrate the layers that we need to integrate in our particular condition in terms of physical, mental, emotional layers that are part of our human template, how all of that can be offered in service, basically. Hrishikena Hrishikesh Shivanam Bhakti Ruchate. That's bhakti. To serve the master of the senses through our senses. And senses include mind and include emotions. So how to consecrate everything for the pleasure of Krishna. Sometimes to consecrate everything, I may need to heal some of those sections. If I realize, some part of me is profoundly dysfunctional, and I know it's getting in the way of my bhakti, that's the point. Well, there's a place to heal that. It's like if your physical body gets damaged, you will go to a doctor to be cured, to be a better servant, so to say. So the same criteria may be applied to a subtle body. We can have a healthy, wholesome humanity from physicality to subtle body and try to offer that in service. So a few thoughts in connection to humanity. And if you allow a few more thoughts in connection to the notion of vulnerability, because for me, a big part of being human is to allow ourselves to be vulnerable. And vulnerable, what it means, let's define terms first, because sometimes vulnerability may be thought of, oh, that's weakness. No, if you are vulnerable, you will be abused. Of course, that can happen if you don't learn to be vulnerable in front of the proper person. So we have to learn to set proper boundaries. But vulnerability, I like to define it according to one expert in vulnerability. Her name is Brené Brown. Maybe you heard about her. Very interesting author. And she will describe vulnerability in connection to three experiences, which are uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Interestingly, every time you are in those moments, there is vulnerability. Uncertainty, when you are in a situation you don't know what's going on, what will happen, it's not clear, it's not under control, you're vulnerable, clearly, overtly. And it's not bad. Again, the point is that it's not bad, it's part of life. When you feel there is some risk, vulnerability, or when there is emotional exposure, there's vulnerability. And we need to expose ourselves emotionally, again, in a proper environment. And that means to be vulnerable. And if I'm vulnerable, of course, in the wrong environment, the potential is abuse. If I'm vulnerable in the right environment, the potential is empowerment, because I show myself as I am, with all my weaknesses and doubts and brokenness of my condition, but I will be ideally fully received, fully accepted, fully understood for who I am. When Rupa Goswami says, reveal your mind in confidence, for me, that's all about that. How will I reveal my heart and mind to others if I'm not vulnerable? I cannot just come with, put three masks. Okay, now I will reveal my mind. No, there's three masks in between. No? So I have to, and again, this has to happen organically, naturally. It cannot be imposed. But vulnerability is very necessary, I will say, to, how to say, to really experience this feeling of belonging. We all want to belong, in this case to Krishna consciousness. We all want to belong, to feel we are part of something bigger than ourselves. But we can only belong when we are being ourselves. I cannot belong to something or someone by showing myself as who I'm not. You follow my point? If I make a facade of who I am, I cannot belong. I can fit in. Fitting in, belonging are not the same. But many times we use those two words to imply the same thing. So that in itself speaks of our misunderstanding. No? Oh, I'm trying to fit in. Fit in. That's not the same as belonging. You don't need to fit in. You need to belong. We try to fit in. And sometimes we conflate the two, thinking it's the same thing. But the problem is that they are exact opposites. Because in order to belong, you need to be who you are. And you need to be accepted for who you are. That's when you can feel, I belong to this person, to this group, to this whatever, to this relationship. I must be who I am, and I must be accepted for who I am. Those are the conditions for belonging. And fitting in is basically the exact opposite. I must be something that I'm not. I have to show myself as more perfect than I am, more whatever that I am, and I will be accepted for who I'm not. Right? And that's fitting in, which is what most people is doing in the world. Like to fitting in, showing myself perfect, social media, all these filters, even to take a picture, how to look nicer than what I actually am. So people really like me, love me, accept me, because if they really know who I am, I will have no friends. So this misunderstanding comes, like, oh, I need so badly to be loved, to be accepted, to be part. But the only way to do that is by faking and creating a whole character. And we can end up doing that even in devotional communities, my friends. This is not just Instagram stuff. We can just create a devotional superhero to show off during Sunday feast, right? Okay, or I have to give a lecture next week. I will prepare lectures so everyone thinks that I'm a very paka devotee and I know everything. I'm impressing everyone. Nobody will get a glimpse about who I actually am. So I will be safe and everyone will appreciate me. But nobody has contacted you actually for who you are. So still you are isolated, you are alone, and that's not actual connection, no actual sangha, technically speaking. Sadhu sangha, as we talked the other day, means sat sangha. Sat means truth, reality, things for, as Prabhupada said, Bhagavad Gita it is. But we not only want Bhagavad Gita as it is, we want everything as it is. I want you as who you are. I want Krishna as he is. I want relationship as they are. And that means vulnerability, no transparency. So again, vulnerability is required for belonging. And everyone needs belonging. Even if you tell me, I don't need belonging, I don't believe you, sorry. You think you don't need belonging. We all need belonging. Actually, we already belong. We are already connected to God in one sense. Nothing exists separated from God, technically speaking, in principle. We have not like three realities, right? Krishna is in the center and everything revolves around that. All his Shaktis are interconnected. So there's already connection of some type. There is belonging. We are not aware of that. And that's why we are desperately looking for belonging. But we need actually to become aware of the belonging that is already taking place and to build up from that to the ultimate belonging. But sometimes we misunderstand all that for fitting in. So we create a different person for others to be impressed, for others to whatever. And sometimes we end up believing that character to ourselves. Like, okay, that's who I am. So it's important that we can, how to say, take a rest from that, because it's so exhausting to make up a character and keep the character active 24/7 so nobody notices. Nobody notices. Well, Krishna is seeing us for who we are actually. So no need to put a mask in front of Krishna, because he already is seeing us for who we are. And not only that, he's already loving us for who we are. So for me, that dismantles the whole fitting in paradigm. Like if I'm absolutely freaking out about anyone seeing me for who I am, and I constructing masks and trying to perform, my devotion is more performative than transformative. But then someone tells me, okay, nobody's noticing all the show you are putting on, but Krishna sees it all, and despite all that, he loves you unconditionally. That completely shatters all this masking and fitting in and all, and you realize, wow, I'm already being loved, but I'm already receiving the most important thing from the most important person, love from God. Even though I'm a mess, even though I'm broken, even though Krishna's saying, waving through all that and loving who you are. So that means that I don't need to make a character and impress anyone, because I'm already accepted by the most important person. So that's darshan. The word darshan in Sanskrit means that. Darshan doesn't mean so much to see, can also mean to see, but means mostly to be seen. It's not so much let's go to the altar and check out the daily outfits. That's darshan. No, don't limit darshan to just which are today's color of dress, which is fine, but don't just reduce darshan to that. Darshan means I will allow myself to be seen. I'm already being seen, but how much do I allow myself to be seen? Krishna seeing me in my nakedness, so to say, but how much I'm like fine with that. I'm trying just to, like the famous Vastraharana Leela, where Krishna steals the cloth of the gopis. There are so many layers of meaning to that Leela. But one meaning is, of course, as we know, Krishna steals the garments of the gopis go out of the Yamuna, and Krishna says, you want your cloth back? You have to come here. No? He's sitting on a tree with all the clothes and like moving the cloth like this and laughing. So all the gopis come out of the Yamuna covering with their two hands, their intimate part, their breasts. And Krishna's like, you know what? By bathing naked in the Yamuna, you have committed aparat, offense. So now you have to beg forgiveness from the Yamuna. And that, how do you do that? You have to take your two hands, put them above your head, do pranam mantra to the Yamuna. No? So one way of understanding that is, okay, the gopis were trained to hide their nakedness, but Krishna wants to see them fully naked. And we shouldn't take that in just in a gross physical way, but just again, the bodies of the gopis are transcendental, so there's nothing like physical about that. So Krishna wants to see the soul transparent. Don't hide. Don't try to hide yourself. Just show yourself naked to me, and Krishna wants to enjoy that nakedness in a healthy way, right? So again, darshan. We are being seen by God in our nakedness, and that's okay. So no need to hide that. So we can be vulnerable. We can show ourselves as we are, and allow ourselves for belonging, for the thing that we need so much, to feel that I am belong and that I am part. Because again, if we don't understand this, our practice or even our showing up to God or other practitioners can take the opposite form, avoiding to being seen at all costs, and creating so many barriers and layers and walls, devotional barriers, devotional filters to distract the attention, so we don't have to see each other for who we are in our particular chapter. So, and we develop again some particular way of being to match the expectations of the audience. Let's put it that way. And that can happen to everyone. I'm saying that especially thinking about me as a sannyasi. Many times people over-idealize you. They think you're a superhero, somehow descended superhero who came to save the whole community. And the danger is when you buy into that. Oh, okay, I have to play superhero for the community now. And I'm being over-idealized without bad intention, but I'm being over-idealized. Many of us have the tendency, we need someone to put on the top of the pyramid. But we were talking, I think yesterday or today, I don't remember. We were talking a lot this day. But when you over-idealize someone, you are dehumanizing that person. Over-idealization is dehumanization, because I'm making you way more of what you actually are. And that's not sensitive, that's not human. So if I accept that, I'm entering into the process of dehumanizing myself and trying to be more of what I am. Superhero. Again, we don't need to be devotional superheroes. We just need to be devotional human beings first, to begin with. When everything is too superhero-like, it's boring. It's not relatable. Like I give the example in my book of this comic Superman. You know Superman here in Belgium? It seems he's universally omnipresent. Okay. So at the beginning, what Superman came originally was like in a comic format. And Superman was honoring his name. He was Superman. I mean, he was like more than Krishna, almost like omnipotent, and everything he could do and nothing could harm him. And it was like invulnerable, right? There was no vulnerability at all. So nobody could kill him, nobody could harm him. He will always win every battle. So what happened as a result of that? After a few weeks of the publishing of the comic, people started to get bored and nobody was reading it. He was too Superman, too superhuman, too perfect. It's boring. It's not relatable. So what did they say? Did they do? They introduced kryptonite. Let's make him vulnerable. Let's bring vulnerability to the picture. That will create charm. And when they did that, all the sales went up like nothing. Oh, he's like us. That creates some point of connection, relatability. And that's part of the charm of Krishna's Nara Leela in its own way. Oh, there's some point, okay, again, and I'm not saying it's the same thing, but there is enough similarity for us to establish some connection. Oh, No? There's some human element, there's some dynamics that I can relate to, that I can feel I want to be part of that forever. And a lot of that has to do with vulnerability. I mean, to be honest, in terms of divine vulnerability, Krishna is pretty vulnerable. Krishna is pretty, in a transcendental way, because many times we talk about God like as the Almighty. You have this expression mostly in Christianity, the Almighty. But that's half of the equation. The other half is all vulnerable. Like Krishna is every day dying in separation of Radharani, literally. Arrangement of Yogamaya is sacred and divine. He will never die, of course, but he's vulnerable in that in separation of her. He's needing her presence. There's a form of neediness in a sacred way, again, but there's a form of necessity, a form of vulnerability. Krishna is, in poetic words of our Acharya, he's been pierced by the arrows of Cupid. He's deeply vulnerable. Mahaprabhu himself, what to speak? Krishna trying to taste Radha Bhav, that throws him in a very vulnerable place. But he becomes the most, at the same time, volcanic expression of the Absolute. The most vulnerable, the most volcanic. Srila Siddha Maharaj will describe Sri Chaitanya as the golden volcano of divine love. Imagine, a golden volcano erupting in ecstasy, with its lava consuming everything on its way. That's a poetic depiction of Mahaprabhu. But all that empowerment came from a deep vulnerability, properly expressed, which transforms into this empowerment. So all this to say, again, just reaching a few words of conclusion. Humanity, vulnerability are very tight, and we in our particular stage, we all need belonging. We don't need fitting in. I don't know you, so I won't talk for you, but I will assume that most of us have had our good dose of fitting in without even being conscious of that, without any bad intention, but just naturally. Like when you're a child, you imitate and you do whatever everyone else does. And there's a time when you are invited to be yourself at one point. And the same happens in devotional life. Each one of us have to be who we are, as simple as that sounds and as difficult as that may be yourself. No need to suspend and compromise your individuality in the context of conformity to a statu quo, to the expectations of an audience, so to say. I will personally translate that more as self-betrayal, so and impersonalism even. If I'm not working as much as I can to be all that I can be as an individual being, still there is some form of impersonalism there. I'm not allowing my personalism, my personhood, to blossom fully in service of Krishna. So again, in contrast to that fitting in, belonging implies be yourself. Be yourself. Do not betray yourself for what the market is demanding from you, so to say. You have to be like this, you have to think like you have at the end of the day, even if we subscribe to a particular philosophy like we all do, at the end of the day, still we have to live it in our own unique way. Each of us have to have our own personal relationship with Krishna. It's not like if I ask you, okay, share with me your experiences in Krishna consciousness. I hope that each one of you will say something different. If you all tell me like a copy-pasted formulaic reply, I will get concerned, because it's like, that's not your experience. It's just like, it's a formulaic answer that we may need to have and tell during some time of our practice. But at one point, you have to have your own realizations, your own experience, our own words. So it's very important that we, and one last point, if I'm allowed to conclude, or two more points. To belong, as I say, we have to be who we are. And the belonging implies I'm presenting myself to Krishna, myself to the world, myself to others, for who I am, even in my conditioned state, even in my imperfections. I'm presenting myself to that. So therefore, as our level of I hope you get this idea. Our level of belonging can never be greater from our level of self-acceptance. Because to belong, I have to present myself and accept myself for who I am. If I am not accepting myself, I cannot belong, because I will never dare to show who I am in all my imperfection. So it's very connected, belonging that we all need, with self-acceptance, to reaching that point of accept who I am. And in order for that to happen, it's important to know Krishna is already accepting me fully. Because many times we are very hard on ourselves, and we may be very accepting of many people except for ourselves. But the fact of knowing Krishna already accepts you and loves you unconditionally, that can give some foundation for self-acceptance. Okay, he's accepting me. I can learn to accept myself on the basis that he accepts me. And by accepting myself, I can have the courage to show who I am as I am, and looking for this experience of belonging that we all need. So you are loved as imperfect as you are. Let's put it in that sutra, like, you are loved as imperfect as you are. So you don't need to become perfect to be loved by Krishna. You may need to become perfect to love Krishna. Yes, thank you. You read my mind as well. So, because sometimes we have that idea, right? Unless I become perfect, whatever that perfection means, each one has their own idea of perfect. Unless I become perfect, Krishna won't love me. But Krishna already loves you as imperfect as you are. So on that foundation, we will perfect ourselves to love him back. But the goal of life is not to be loved by Krishna. Why not? Because that's already happening. The goal of life is not love from Krishna, it's love for Krishna. And a big important point in order to love Krishna is to know that you are loved by Krishna already. That creates a very healthy foundation. So on that foundation, I can feel inspired enough to love him back. And to know, and so I'm not loving him back so he loves me, because he already loves me. So I don't love him back out of fear that he may get angry with me or who knows what, because he already loves me. He's a loving God. So I'm loving him back for the right reasons, you know, like a natural reciprocation to the love I already received. I'm returning the embrace. I'm returning the love he already gave me first. He's kickstarting the whole thing. Like Thomas Merton will say, a Christian mystic that I like a lot. He will say, if you are praying, no, you are not taking the initiative, he says. It's not that you are praying so God replies. If you are praying, it's because he replied first. No, and that's why you are praying now. No, you follow. It's not like, okay, I'm praying, let's hope that Krishna does his part at some point. No, because he does his part to begin with, you are now approaching him. So it's important that we have these parts in order in the sequence. So we don't feel, okay, I have to begin the whole thing. And let's hope that Krishna is merciful enough to notice all the things that I'm doing. No, he's already doing so much to begin with, even when we are not even aware of his existence. And when we become aware of all that he has done and how much he loves us, of course, we will naturally move to give something back. But on that foundation, we can also coexist from a more healthy place with our imperfection. Because sometimes, at least in some Gaudiya circles that I've experienced throughout the last decades, we have been very capable of stigmatizing imperfection instead of normalizing imperfection. I'm not saying promoting imperfection, but normalizing. Like, hey, we are not in Prem Bhakti. I have some imperfection. Of course, that's supposed to happen. That's a symptom, a natural, obvious symptom of the stage you're in. It's okay. It's not the goal of life, but it's supposed to happen at that stage. So we should normalize that instead of stigmatize what we should be normalizing. So that's for me, and for me this is very important to know that Krishna already loves you. That creates that like decompressing mood of, okay, I'm imperfect still, Krishna loves me. Okay, that gives me hope, and I in time will change, but it's not that I have to go crazy about becoming perfect next weekend so Krishna likes me at some point, you know? So anyhow, all this is in connection with the idea of vulnerability, because vulnerability entails showing myself as I am, with all scars and wounds and brokenness included in my current humanity, and knowing that Krishna is holding of that, all of that, receiving all of that, accepting all of that through unconditional love. And on that foundation, all the healing can take place, all the transformation that still is required can take place. But we don't need to reject humanity, we don't need to reject vulnerability, but we need just to embrace them from the proper place. So a few thoughts, of course, so much more can be said, and that's why I felt the need I have to write the book to say more things. This is just like an appetizer of the meal, of the eternal infinite meal. So many things can be said. But as usual, I like to stop here myself and invite you for if you have questions or if you have comments or thoughts, so we can continue reflecting together on this.
Maybe you need
theme.
a glass of water.
I have it here. Thank you. And thank you for reminding me of that. Yeah. Maybe is it possible that we turn on the light now, because here it's become a little dark. Sorry for the contrast. Enlightened.
Oh, there you are.
We are enlightened. Here we are. Yeah.
Maharaj, can I say something?
Of course.
Vulnerability is maybe not synonymous, but it is at least family of surrender.
Mm-hmm.
Vulnerability means I put aside my false ego.
Mm-hmm.
I give up the idea that I'm in control, that, I show myself as my true identity, an eternal servant of Krishna.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you were speaking also about humanity. And it is Krishna who's human-like, and we are a reflection of Krishna, made after the image of God. But out of the 8,400,000 species of life, the human-like form, it's perfect and complete, because everything is created. The first point you made actually is you were speaking about matter. Is it good or bad? Well, Srila Prabhupada said, well, the first thing I learned when in my first contacts with yoga, the first thing I heard is it is all in the mind.
Okay.
Is it good or bad?
Mhm.
It's in your mind. It's according to your level of consciousness.
Yeah.
It is good, as Srila Prabhupada also said, in the material world, there's no good or bad. So bad because it's entangling. It's diverting your attention to Krishna. And that is the real definition of bad. Suffering is not bad. Suffering is necessary. It's good. It's designed by Krishna. It's allowed to be there by Krishna. That's part of our rehabilitation to become healthy again. So the only thing that is necessary to be human is purification. Bhakti.
Thank you.
What about the bombs, the nuclear bombs? Because they say nothing is so good or bad.
Well, as you sow, you shall reap. That means if you do, according to the modes, you can be in ignorance, passion, or goodness. According to your activities, you create more or less suffering. But the suffering, whether it be by a bacteria or by COVID virus or by an atomic bomb, the suffering is again, as it is said, as long as there are slaughterhouses, there will be wars. So it's all connected. Suffering doesn't matter what is the cause of suffering. It's Adhyatmika, Bhautaka, Devika, maybe an atomic bomb, maybe something else. But suffering is necessary in our conditioned state to open our eyes, to start thinking, oh, we did something wrong. What's happening? I don't want to suffer. I don't want this. I have to change. And I cannot change the world, but I can change myself. That means I can change my perception. And then when you change your perception, then you can see And actually everything is good because everything is connected with Krishna. These Upanishads start by saying, Krishna is complete, and whatever comes from Krishna is also complete. So he's the super intelligence. He knows why it is as it is. Everything has a purpose. But if you don't understand Krishna and Krishna's purpose, we try to take the role of Krishna, then we make mistakes. I'm the proprietor, you think I'm the proprietor, and there's suffering, and by whatever weapon they can. They say technological advancement. Well, leave that word aside. It's not an advancement the way whatever knowledge is there today, they weaponize it. They know that everything is vibration. The atom is not just the building block of the universe. Around the atoms, there's protons and neutrons and electrons and whatever. It's energy moving. So they know this by now. What do they do with this knowledge? Instead of using it for healing people, they weaponize it. They use weapons like that already today. Vibration, a cannon. When there's a big riot, they use a cannon, switch it on, and there's a vibration going, and the people go. So what about the atomic bomb? Yeah, well, they will invent more cruel things than you can imagine, I'm afraid.
Like Krishna, the Gita says, the mind can be one's worst enemy or best friend. So it's all about how we choose to interact with things.
But the point is, suffering is not bad. It's necessary in our conditioned state. Bad is what hinders your approaching Krishna. That is bad. That's the definition of bad.
And even we could add to that, even like suffering exists even in eternity in love. It's another type of suffering. I'm not skipping, but my point is we should be careful also not to develop a total rejection to the idea of suffering, because even in this world we can feel compassion. And compassion is a form of suffering, because I'm seeing you suffer and I suffer, but it's a suffering that is open in my heart. So it's a symptom of love. One quality of a devotee is compassion and kripalu. So, but it's some suffering there, but it's of course something that opens the heart. Exactly. So
and the suffering here is this first matras prasasti pranaya. Matras prasas means it's only due to your identifying with the body and that you experience pain or pleasure due to sense perception.
Thank you. What else? Something else? Anupam? Yes.
Yeah, in connection to the first part on humanity. Yeah, I mean, when I think about it, it boils down basically to my body. Because when we think about humanity, although we don't identify, and we are not supposed to identify the body as a material body, but that's always like, this material body. And I can see from like my early age and going to the college and studying Western philosophy, my favorite mantra, Soma Sema, body is the grave of the soul. So that's kind of, and of course joining devotees and all this like small things that I guess some who joined later, they're not aware of. Muchi box, who is aware of expression Muchi box? Muchi means something which is filthy. Yeah,
which is what?
Filthy. Muchi,
filthy.
Something dirty. Something.
Muchi.
Box. That's when the ladies' ashram, when they kept their things for hygiene, personal hygiene. So that was related to the body, to clean the body. So it was called Muchi box.
Okay.
And then I was like, first like, but I accepted, of course, it's Muchi box. But then listening your classes recently, then you brought this idea, which for me was really like a big, kind of a crucial game changer. Like this, because this body is not good, and it's and we kind of hope to develop bhakti and one day reach that siddha deha. But what about this? As we said, that there is sadhana deha that we get.
Sadhaka deha.
Sadhaka deha.
Yeah.
Initiation process.
Yeah.
Something that, so it's already kind of
So there's a place to even say, I am this body.
Yeah, because that's what I'm given. This
Yeah. We're not this body. What is this body mean? Which body is referring to, right? So, but yeah, in the Shastra is mentioned this idea of the sadhaka deha, now, which is the body of a practitioner that you receive initiation, you receive mantra, you receive name, you receive a whole new orientation to your identity. So now there's genuine place to say, I am this body. I am this sadhaka deha, because this sadhaka deha fully engaged and spiritualized is what will turn into the siddha deha ultimately. You won't get a siddha deha unless your sadhaka deha is fully immersed in bhakti. So there is a place to change the orientation to the body and see it as a gift that was given. Like Guru gives sadhaka deha. So in one sense, it's not mine. It's a gift given by my Guru. So I have to take care of that, to honor that properly. So it's a very different orientation than saying just like, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this, instead to say, I am this. No? As we were talking earlier today, right? Like you can spiritualize your body, your mind, and that particular identity accompanies you into eternity. Like I was given this example of the grumpy divine person, and I would think of one particular person who passed away. He was a Vaishnava, very, very, very exalted, very advanced, almost like consensually living in Vrindavan, almost consensually. Everyone agreed. I mean, everyone that I know, like he attained the ultimate destiny. He was pretty grumpy. But he was a pure devotee at the same time. So the grumpiness now became an added spice that added charm to the equation, because it was grumpiness in the context of pure devotion. You follow? So maybe without pure devotion, it's like, no, thank you. But in the context of he being a pure devotee, there were so many unique, beautiful qualities that grumpiness just appeared. Krishna considered to keep that grumpiness and some dose to add some particular experience of that taste, and everyone was charmed by this person and by charmed by his grumpiness. When he will become grumpy, everyone was like relishing that. It was like a type of rasa. So that for me speaks about that. Okay, you were grumpy before, you're carrying that grumpiness as an anartha, and what was an anartha now becomes a spice that pleases the Vaishnavas. Again, in a proper way. I'm not saying this as an excuse. So I keep all my anarthas in place, and Krishna will make the arrangement for everyone to enjoy my anarthas. I'm not saying that, but it's all about what you mentioned, no? Because whether it's the physical body, sadhaka, but also physical also has a psychic dimension. So there's the emotional, psychological nature and disposition. So yeah, I think it's an important turning paradigm shift of this particular point. And of course, sometimes I'm careful to overemphasize that, because I know that for some devotees, they have heard too many times that you are not this body. So if I suddenly tell, you're actually your sadhaka deha, they may die of a heart attack. So we were gradually introducing. But I think it's a healthy thing to say. I will tell you something, and maybe this will put me into trouble, but it's fine. I'm already at this point of my life. thick skin is there. That's fine. I mean, I won't say anything. Hopefully, nothing controversial. But maybe some of you recently. So I was talking with a devotee in Italy, and we both agreeing on that. Recently, there's this place in New York, United States, called Times Square. So I've been there recently. We had a festival for Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and different Gaudiya acharyas from different lines were there. It was nice. Also, it was a little bit like bizarre, because all this is the place where I'd never seen so many, how do you call these signs? Billboards. So it's like everything is a billboard. It's a whole city made of billboards. Like there's no walls, there's just billboards. So it was like too much input, right? I had to just like look at one pigeon there, and just like there I am, because it was too much. so recently, and this is a main place in New York, like the mecca of that place of the world. And recently, somehow devotees, I don't know, paying or some friends, some contact, but they got to have Prabhupada appearing on one of these billboards. So it was a picture of Prabhupada, and there was one quote saying, "You are not this body." And they would start to share a video of someone filming when the billboard appeared, and there was one devotee in the video like celebrating, jumping. And to be honest, I was not celebrating. Why not? Again, I'm not. It's not that I'm unhappy that Prabhupada appeared. I was just like, why I mean, if I'm given 10 seconds to represent my tradition to the whole world in Times Square with one single quote, I wouldn't choose "you are not this body." I don't feel that's healthy. I mean, to be honest, I don't feel it's relevant to the people walking in a place like Times Square to read "you are not this body." It's like, I don't think people say like, "Wow, I'm drawn to that." And even to the devotees, I don't think that's the most important thing to say. I think it's more important. I'm not discarding that quote that Prabhupada says so many times in certain contexts, but at the same time, I don't think that's the best quote to represent Srila Prabhupada. No? Among so many other things he did and said, considering the time, place, circumstance also, he said so many times also, Krishna loves you. No, you are.
Would you put that on the billboard?
Sorry again?
Would you put that on the billboard?
Put what?
Krishna loves you. Instead, what other message would you put
I thought
instead
they're saying, what are
to
you,
represent
what
our
would you-
tradition?
Yeah. Of course, I haven't just thought about okay, which one, because there were just like 10 seconds for words. But I will go into some direction. Again, if I will have given the chance, I will spend some time really thinking about and researching. But something positive. That's my point. Something that is not just like what you are not. Don't do that. I'm not denying that from a certain perspective, if you're not a sadhaka, there's place to say you are not this body. I'm not canceling that. I'm just saying I don't feel it's the most positive, the most representative thing to present bhakti to the world, so to say.
Nice.
So, but yeah, I will go into something more. Of course, I will think a lot about, okay, who will read this in those 10 seconds, Times Square? What will be relatable to people in Times Square? No, so it may take some time to come out, but something positive for sure.
But usually Srila
Something
Prabhupada
positive.
didn't make any compromises. He told the truth, like it or not.
Mhm.
So the basic thing is to start your spiritual journeys. You're not this body. The
Mhm.
soul. That's the first ABC.
Yeah, I get the point, but I'm not so sure if Srila Prabhupada will say exactly the same thing if he will be here
I'm not
now.
sure of that either, but
And
there's
for-
nothing wrong
Did it
with
say you're just not the body, you're spirit, soul, or just did it say you're not this body?
You're not this body.
It stopped
Mhm,
there.
mhm. So it
But
seems.
anyway, it puts a doubt in the people. If
Mhm.
someone looks, I'm not this body.
Yeah.
It's
You're a spirit soul that would cost
so
too
what
much
I am.
to add.
Yeah.
The price
Yeah,
for
It costs too much.
Yeah, of course.
Exactly.
Probably. I'm not saying that nobody read that and felt anything positive. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's my opinion. If I will have the chance, I will think about something that gives that, which is not canceling that. Again, it's not canceling. It's just
clarifying your point that we are all eternal individuals,
Mhm,
and there's
mhm.
nothing wrong with
Mhm,
that.
mhm.
Yeah.
I'm more than this body.
So many ways. Again, not criticizing anything. Just
No,
came
no,
in
I
connection
get
to
it,
what
yeah.
we were talking. And I hope this doesn't get me into trouble. It's going live around the world.
Continue, Josh. Continue.
One extra layer. So they're polishing the nails now. Crucifixion is in its way. No problem. Anyhow, something else? Yes, Keshav. Sorry. One more thing and we go back. Yeah.
Just in connection to what you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
Is it like nowadays, because especially in the States, in the West, even in Europe, already following the footsteps of the great Americans, because nowadays it's all about identifying. I can identify as I want, so nobody has the right to tell me what I'm not, because if you tell somebody you're not this body, oh really? You're not gonna tell me what I am this body?
Yeah.
Because now it's like
gender issues and
Discrimination,
not only
yeah,
gender
yeah,
issues, but
yeah, it's discrimination. So
Yeah.
it's
so much, especially in the US, there's
Yeah.
so much susceptibility to, if you just don't affirm what I think I am, you just end up in jail, literally, or it can be a whole scandal. And sometimes my assumptions in terms of identity can be quite unusual, so to say. I've read some just to be aware of what's going on. And of course, as you may know, but there are some people who really think their own self-definition of identity is not even as a human. Some of them will say, I'm a giraffe. And we laugh, but if you laugh to that person, they will feel offended. They will call the police. If you are a teacher and you're a student, say, I'm a giraffe, and you don't affirm that, you may be kicked out from your role. So there is this complex dynamics, and some of them will say, even, I've heard of you who do not even identify with a living being. Some of them will say, I'm a table. That's my sense of identity. I'm a table. Of course, I'm not defending that. I'm just saying they come with that, and it's a very unique social dynamics that we were never confronted with before. So somehow, okay, I'm now trying to deliver a message to a world speaking in these languages, and there's very polarized stances. It's complicated, and I will say even we should talk about that to know to which world we are trying to talk, in which language, and how to keep the message relevant without, of course, compromising. It's not that, okay, let's change the whole Siddhanta so everyone is happy with us. I'm not saying that, but also how to be sensitive to the environment so we remain relevant and relatable. It's an interesting times we are living in. Let's put it that way. Teresa, you want to share
Yes, I have a
something?
quick thing.
Yes.
Like what you just mentioned about gender identity, body identity,
Mhm.
it kind of speaks to how you're not your body might not be the message for this time and place, because they're already thinking that they're not their body.
Mm.
Their body is a male body, but
Mhm.
they feel a female inside. Or
Mhm,
their body is a
mhm,
female body,
mhm.
they feel a male. So there's already some kind of thing inside that they are not their body.
Mm. Yeah, of course, someone may also argue that, and it's okay, the argument, like, well, but maybe a message like that could affirm their
Yeah.
their convictions, so they will read that and they will feel reassured.
Exactly.
But again, reassured from which perspective? So it's complicated. Kishapriya, you had a question or a comment, whatever you would like to share.
Just something very basic, actually. As you were talking about the grumpiness.
Okay, let's go back to the
It's
grumpiness.
a character trait.
Mhm.
So, where are the character traits stored if we receive a spiritual body? Because if we get a next material body, everything is stored in the subtle body.
Mm.
So what about the subtle body, and where would this grumpiness be stored in order to be recuperated in a spiritual sense? Or spiritual body, Siddha?
Mm-hmm. Well, Siddha Deha will say has its own, it's not just how to say, Siddha Deha is not just the physical dimension in the sense, of course, it's not physical in one sense, it's spiritual body, but it has a physicality, so to say. It has a form, it has a shape, and there is also a mind, and there's all these different ingredients. In the spiritual identity, you also have a mind, you also have discrimination, but fully spiritualized, fully enlightened. So we will say that in the same way that all that stuff is stored in a particular department, how to say, in our conditioned state, it will be their fully spiritualized version of that, and you will have that same spiritualized storage department, so to say. That's basically how I put it in simple terms. But Teresa, yeah.
And even Krishna has those himself. He has his own
Krishna is grumpy.
his own department of ego. You know, and his own. He still has a mind and an ego.
Mhm,
Of course,
mhm.
they take the personifications of his friends, but
Yeah,
and that's
yeah. This is described in Shastra, right? Krishna's buddhi is personified in this Sakha, in this friend. Krishna's ego No, not false ego, but ego, identity. No?
Even all the cows,
Mind,
there's millions
buddhi.
of cows, and each of the cows is different, and have different names,
Name,
different
color,
character-
personality. And Krishna relates to each of them.
Krishna is
uniquely
unique,
and personally.
We're an integral part of Krishna, so we're all unique.
Mhm. So,
It doesn't matter where it's stored.
mhm.
And
So,
it's our nature.
but yeah, that will be the answer. I hope that helps. We are reaching 8 p.m. Sorry for torturing you today with that one. But yeah, I think we'll reach it. I don't know if there's any urgent thing that won't allow you to sleep tonight. If not, we can continue tomorrow. We will continue tomorrow sharing. We have 3 more days for those who are invited, and we're willing to continue exploring some of these themes together. So it's not just me talking with the fancy camera here, it's a joint exploration. So thanks so much for being part of that. Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki jai, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Sadhu Sangha ki jai, Gaur Premanand Hari Vancha Kalpataru Vyascha Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo